it's called natural movement. So they don't get up and spin in the morning. I think in Loma Linda, some of the elderly populations do maybe use a little bit of like an aerobic bike because they have access to that. But what they do is they're active throughout their day at sort of a low to moderate intensity. So, for example, they might walk to the market, they might walk to their friend's house, but that walk might be like 2 miles. 2 miles over, 2 miles back.
Okay.
So, and they're doing it throughout their day. A lot of them are older, so they might garden if they're retired, but they don't have these long periods of sedentary behavior that we have in like the Western world.
Yeah. That sedentary behavior freaks me out. It actually scares me on a daily basis. I'm like, this is so unnatural to be sitting down.
Yeah, and this is the problem. It's like, well, everyone is like, this is how do you work otherwise? You know what I mean? So it's really hard.
Hello and welcome to Girls with Goals. This week we have Dr. Ciara Kelly. She is a qualified medical doctor with 3 years experience under her belt and a keen interest in public health and preventative medicine. She has her blog, her podcast called The Irish Balance. So you will definitely want to check that out. It's amazing. And you might be wondering where your regular host, Niamh Maher, is. Well, don't worry about Niamh. She is loving holidays, loving life, and I'm Louise Carroll, and I'll be your host today. So yeah, where will we begin? So 6 words or less to describe yourself. Okay. Will I go first?
You go first, yeah.
Okay. What would I describe myself as? I would describe myself as a hummus-loving, realistic optimist.
Whoa.
And if anyone thinks that those two things cannot coincide...
Is that an oxymoron? I don't know.
Possibly. I mean...
But I agree with hummus, absolutely. I mean, favourite kind?
Where would we be? Oh, just plain, regular.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The sun-dried tomato? No?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, Moroccan is pretty good as well.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, now I'm hungry. Yeah. Okay, I'll do mine. So mine is an unusual word. It's ikigai. And that's kind of cheating because it means... something I'll explain. So it's more than 6 words, but it is one word. So it's a concept that comes from a part of the world called Okinawa in Japan. And it means, loosely translated, because I don't speak Japanese, what you get up for in the morning, or what makes you jump out of bed in the morning. And I think it describes me because that's what I'm trying to do as a doctor and with the platform I have online. So ikigai is a mix of what you love doing, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. So...
That sounds like the dream.
It's like a little Venn diagram. It's a really cool concept if you Google it, but it's something I read about. There's a book about it as well, and it's something I just find so interesting.
You talk about that a lot, though, your why in life, which I think is, it's essentially our purpose, and I think that is so important. And, you know, if people have reason to get up in the morning and they're happy to do so, I think you're pretty much sorted. I mean, not a lot else can go wrong. It's really important. So what we're going to talk about today, following on a lot from your podcast, your blog, taking a lot of inspiration from that, and what you do best. So we want to start talking about sleep, and then we'll follow on with stress, a little bit of social media, and then the blue zones that you talk about, which I find so intriguing. So tell us why sleep is so important, and how do we get more of it? And especially when stress feeds into that. I feel like people are really stressed in their lives. We're always on social media as well.
I know, yeah. Hands in the air.
Yeah. So how do we fix that? Or can we fix it? Is it something that we'll just always have to live with? And can we learn to manage it, basically?
The answer is yes, we definitely can learn to manage it and hopefully improve it. I should probably explain where my interest in all of this has come from.
Yeah.
So I obviously am a medical doctor, so I did my undergraduate in Trinity, did 3 years hospital medicine to do my intern year and my SHO years. Anyone who's been in the Irish hospital system will know that sort of phrasing. And then I decided to do a master's in public health and nutrition, which is what I'm currently doing this year, full-time student. And I'm really interested in sleep because it's part of my thesis in a way, because I'm doing it on shift work and the effect of shift work on our health. And anyone who's done shift work before will know that it entails a lot of disruption to your sleep. And I say that as a previous and relatively recent shift worker myself, doing a lot of night shifts and things like that. So that's what I'm currently doing is my master's, and I'm currently writing the thesis and learning about the awful effects of shift work on health. No, I'm joking. So sleep, So sleep, there's been this huge rise in interest in sleep, and similar to kind of every other health topic that comes along, because of the way technology connects us so quickly, we're no longer disconnected from people's remote interests. So if someone writes a book on sleep and, you know, some big influencer or whatever reads it or does a podcast about it, everyone knows about it. So this book came out last year called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker.
Yes. I've
You
been
read
meaning,
it?
no,
Oh.
everyone I know has, and they're like, Louise, you will love this. Read it.
Like anyone I've spoken to, and a lot of people have read it. He's a professor of neuroscience in the US, and he's been on quite a few podcasts now. And he's very well, obviously very well read and deep in the research, and is a researcher in sleep. But everyone read the book, and it is an absolute game changer. So I read it just after finishing a week of night shifts. So that was not fun. What have I done to myself? But sleep is so important, and I think it's probably one of the first things that gets sacrificed when we get really busy and stressed.
Yes. Yeah.
We go, I don't have time for that. Oh, 4 hours is fine, 5 hours is fine. And what we know from the science, which isn't new, but the thing about Professor Walker's book is that it brought a lot of that science all together and put it in a book that everyone read and thought, oh my God, what the hell? So what he has shown through a lot of his research, or through the research that he describes in his book, is that less than 7 hours is really like something that we want to be avoiding in terms of the sleep quantity.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I've always been the type of person who needs 8 to 9 hours.
Yeah.
And then when you say that to someone, they're like, you're so weak.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
that
so
is such
indulgent.
a weak thing.
Or a weekend thing. Yeah.
And like people wear this like, you know, I got 4 hours of sleep last night and look how well I am today, as a badge of honor. And
as
I'm
they're
like,
on their 5th coffee by 9 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, this is the thing. It's like a lot of other things that we now are talking about in terms of lifestyle. It's normalizing like the basics, you know what I mean, and saying that they're okay. So what we know from a sleep point of view is that it varies depending on what guideline you're looking at, but 7 to 8 or 7 to 9 hours is sort of the sweet spot for adults.
Okay.
For kids, it's actually, you know, above that. There's kind of different depending whether you're less than 1 or above 1, less than 5, etc. They'll be up at like 10, 11, 12, which seems crazy to us, but they are rapidly growing, so they need it.
What about teenagers?
Teenagers somewhere in between, because it depends what guidelines you're looking at. Some will say that's 15 and above, some say that's 18 and above, in terms of like where the cutoff is between adults and teenagers. I think from an adult point of view, particularly when you're kind of at the end stage of puberty, that's sort of 18 years, we're looking at 7 to 9 hours, somewhere in between. Most people will say 8 is the ideal. Personally, I get about 7.5, and if I'm less than 7, I am a bear. Like, do not talk to me. But we really, really have to get that message out there about the 7-hour minimum, because we know less than that has so many wide-ranging effects on our health, from in the short and long term. We know it changes our metabolic profile in terms of like the different effects it has on how we metabolize food, our hunger hormones, how we concentrate, like our ability to store memory. You know, people say like sleep on it, you know, but that's actually
that's a very
true.
real
you know,
thing.
Even the night before an exam, you know, all-nighters, really bad idea. Really, really bad idea, because you're consolidating all that information overnight. Like you literally grow and repair with sleep. And we can't expect ourselves to be on the go 24/7. We need at least 7 to 8 to 9 of those to be rest.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't expect your car to run without putting petrol in it.
No, absolutely not.
You know.
Fair point. And is it true that without sleep, you're kind of getting your body more inflamed? Like, is inflammation on the rise? And that kind of causes disease and stuff, does it? Or
yeah, there's a lot of chat about inflammation. I'm not knee deep in the research on it, but I think when a lot of people talk about inflammation, they're talking about our stress hormone, cortisol.
Right.
So when we get stressed, like let's say you're walking across the road and a car comes out of nowhere and you go, oh my God, and it's that sort of fight or flight response, you know, that feeling, and everyone, you know, we were from an evolutionary point of view, that's our run away from a bear response.
Yeah.
So when that happens, we get a couple of different things happen in our brain. Our sympathetic nervous system gets activated, so that's where we get all that sort of adrenaline from. And we also get a stress response too, all coming from the brain. And the stress response leads to cortisol being produced. And a lot of people are talking about that as our sort of stress hormone, and talking about how inflammation can arise as a result of it. When we talk about not having enough sleep, it is a stress to the body because we're not repairing it. And there's a lot of interesting research about how that affects our immunity, and you know, whether, I suppose, it's been associated with a lot of adverse metabolic effects too. So like the inflammation kind of topic is very, very broad, but I think what we kind of just need to pare it back to make it easier for people to understand is that like sleep deprivation is a stress to our body the same way, you know, that sort of fight or flight response if we get chased by a bear is too. And if we do that to excess chronically, that's not good for our health long term, from a physical or mental health point of view.
Absolutely. And you're talking there about the fight or flight response. It worked back in the day when we were running away from a bear, but now our stress is kind of, let's say, more work related. We're not burning off that energy. We're walking into an office and sitting there really, really stressed. So what do you think is the best way to manage it in that sense? Like, is there something we can do in the evenings? Would you say exercise more? Are there any particular foods we can eat? Or is that just a kind of utopia? How do we manage it?
So I think that's a really good question. I'm really interested in this because I don't know if it's that we're less resilient in managing stress, or if it's that there is more things to stress us out. Technology being one of them. You know, if we look at how many things we can now do on our phone, like we're essentially carrying around mini computers all the time. So it means that when previously our parents maybe might have gone and done their work day and come home in the evening, and you know, I don't know about you, my parents minimally use social media, so they don't see emails after hours, you know, whereas we now can. We're a generation that can, and that can always have stimulation. So so I'm kind of going off point a little bit in your question, but I think there's two parts of it. I think one is switching off from technology, and the one is switching off from the other stresses in your day. So, and I know they're connected, but we can talk about maybe the switching off from the phone side of it maybe a little later. I think in the evening, if you're talking about, you know, managing a really stressful day, there's loads of different, you know, things people suggest for stress management at the individual level. Things like breathing techniques, exercise definitely really, really helps. That'll be very different for one person to the next. So I used to be someone who thought that they needed like a really sweaty session to get all the stress of work out. And over time, I realized that really wasn't what I needed. I found yoga, just started to listen to a lot of podcasts, went for a lot of walks, and I still enjoy like the intense sessions, but not when I've had a really stressful day.
That's interesting because like everyone is always saying, Louise, just do yoga. And I find when I do yoga, I get more stressed because I feel I'm obviously doing it wrong, but I get more stressed because I'm like, I'm just sitting here and I'm not doing anything.
You can't do yoga wrong, is the first thing I'll say. But yeah, sorry, that was
maybe it is an exercise thing for some people, and then
for others it might
meditate.
just be I mean, there's a lot of apps that have come out, like Calm and Headspace. They're not a one size fits all either, but they are really helpful to sort of get you to tune in to just how you're feeling. And do you know what, you might even need an app to do it. Like for me, I take 5 minutes every day with a coffee, and I go, okay, how do I feel? Like, how's today gonna look? What am I doing? Just being mindful of how you're feeling, and maybe even how the previous day was. Is there any other stuff in the evening? Just like meeting a friend, honestly. Like that, you get this invisible lift when you have a really good catch up with your mom or your sister or your dad or whoever it is, or your best friend.
Putting your focus somewhere else.
And listening to how their day was and venting about yours, you know, like I think that's really, really valuable. And we forget because we can see, oh, I saw on their Facebook that they were, you know, wherever. I heard about their holiday. No, you didn't. Like you saw their story. Like you didn't see how their holiday was.
You saw what they wanted you to see.
Yeah, exactly. You saw the highlight reel. You didn't see how they were. Like maybe they were away and they got like a really bad tummy bug and they just had a horrible time. You know, I'm not saying they did, but the point is that we need to prioritize that real world social connection, and that can be a really good stress buster. Like we know talking problems out is one of probably the most effective ways to manage stress.
And if someone's a true introvert and when they get stressed and they just go all quiet and they're like, oh my God, I can't go outside. What would you say for them? Like, what's the best way to go about that?
Again, it's about finding either one or a little bundle of techniques that work for you. So, like, my favorite, I don't find breathing techniques overly helpful for me, but one I do love is box breathing, where you picture a box and you, like, basically each length of each box is 4 seconds. So you inhale, hold, exhale, hold, and you just do it a couple of times. I use the Calm app as well. Like I would call myself an introvert, and I do also really enjoy catching up with family and friends, but I do also need that time for me. And when I'm stressed, like I do that. Like I'll be like, I need to just get my stuff done. Like, no, you actually need to go outside and see some sunshine and go to a yoga class, or just, you know, just be outside in the world.
Actually, vitamin D, oh my God, so important.
So important, exactly. Like I
Mm.
think it's just about finding what works for you. And if things are really stressful over a prolonged period, and you don't feel like talking about family and friends, like there's nothing wrong with talking to like a professional either.
Yeah.
Like, you know, counselling services, whether you're in college or at work, there's absolutely, like, everything is right about doing that if you need it.
And I think in our culture today, everyone is like, oh, you know, there are ways to never feel stressed, to never feel sad. I'm like, what?
No,
that is insane. These are natural things to feel. It's just a matter of managing them and knowing how to get through it. And
definitely,
I think that's a much better way of going about it than hoping for a dream world.
Yeah, exactly. Like my favorite,
far more realistic.
We've done a lot of stress chat in my master's this year because we did health psychology, and my favorite definition, which just makes it much more easier to understand, like when we talk about stress, like, well, what is it, you know? Because it can be something different for everyone. Like missing the bus is a stress, but so is, you know, maybe losing your job. But they're not exactly, you know, they're not, what's the word?
It's not a life and death situation.
Well,
like those things are really crappy when they happen, and it's hard and it's, you know, it's rough. But I do think when they happen, it's entirely in our control as to how we deal with them.
That's it. Yeah. It's like, so when you talk about stress, it's like there's a stressor. Like the stressor is the event or the situation or the person or whatever it is that's giving you the feelings, whether they're mental or physical, that make you feel stressed, right? So when you think about that, you're like, okay, well, that's that stressor. And what you're looking at is an interaction between, okay, what's the demand that's being put upon me? Let's say it's a work deadline that's tomorrow and you thought it was in a week's time. And you're like, oh my God. And then what resources do you have? So you have all your knowledge and skills that you've picked up. You've got a friend you can call tonight and vent about it. You've got maybe, I don't know, you can go for a walk in the morning just to make yourself feel a little bit better, make your plan. They're your resources.
Yes.
So when the demand and resources, you know, when you get the resources overcoming the demands, then you're becoming resilient and you're adapting to that process in a positive way. But it's when we're consistently perceiving our resources to be under the demands that we get really, really stressed out. It happened to me last week. Like it was a thesis thing, but basically I'm also apartment hunting.
I don't blame you with the thesis.
Oh, stop. Anyway, but by Friday night, I wasn't going to the Spice Girls. I was really stressed out about my thesis and just felt like I had too much to do and not enough time. Time was my resource.
Yeah.
And I knew that feeling. I was like, no, you know what? And also my wisdom tooth kicked off, which is always a sign. But I just knew, and I was like, that's me feeling stressed. Okay, what's the demand? What's the resource? Make a little mental list. No, actually, I can build enough of these to overcome it. Talk it out, make a to-do list, you know, make a plan of when I'm going to get these things done. And as a result, this week, no wisdom tooth pain, feel so much better. You know, so but it's just about being mindful of that process instead of being like, oh, it's definitely infected. Like, no, you're definitely just stressed out. And you're just, you know, that's your cortisol going off.
That's the kind of the glass half full thing right there. And I think when people, I mean, I started recently, something I started doing was like a gratitude journal. Yeah. And like when I remember to do it, it's really good.
When every I remember to be grateful.
Yeah. I'm like, God, I haven't been grateful in a while. Let's open that back
Better
up.
practice that. Oh my God.
And it's all the little things. It's like, I'm so grateful for my hummus sandwich today. I'm like, it was the best thing ever. Yeah. I'm grateful for getting a lift home on a rainy day. Like the little things are what really, really makes your day. And I think if people like focus on them a little bit more, the bigger things fall into place a lot easier.
Completely. Like, and I say, it sounds like I feel like I have it all figured out. I really don't. But I spent my first 3 years as a doctor were amazing. Like I learned so much, but it was some of the most stressful situations that I've ever been in my life. And a lot of those really stressful situations, as is the nature of being on call, were in the middle of the night when there was minimal resources, bar my brain and the amazing people I was working with. You know, it wasn't the ideal situation where everyone is around in the hospital during the daytime. You've got, you know, skeleton staff at nighttime. And by the time I got to the second year of my SHO training, I was like, right, okay, I have no stress management toolkit. Like, this needs to change. I can't just keep being like hypomanic running around the wards. Like, this is grand, that's fine. No, it's not. You need to do some yoga, you need to do some chill time, you know. So that's taken about a year to sort of really get mindful of like what is the stress, what does stress look like for me and how does it make me feel? And it might be something like, oh, you're in a really bad mood and you're like, actually I'm not, I'm irritable because of that thing that stressed me out and I need to let that go. And just being able to have that dialogue with yourself instead of letting the stress control you, I guess. Being mindful is probably the buzzword of last year. But
and figuring that out in a year is pretty good. I mean, some people, and I'm not being a smart ass, but some people take a lifetime to kind of, you know, de-stress and calm themselves.
So. It's relative to life experience too. Like, you know, what upbringing you had and, you know, how like I'm very grateful for all of that. But
Yeah.
I think it's something that, particularly with the amount of things that can stress us out now in the 21st century, particularly technology too, we do have to spend a bit of time like figuring that out for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's only going to, like, the potential stressors are only going to increase. So we need to.
Yeah, technology is not going to disappear.
It's
so
not going to disappear. People are making too much money off of that. No.
We just need to manage it a whole lot better. Speaking of social media and technology,
Yes.
I suppose it gets a lot of stick.
Yeah. It does.
But again, is it on us to just manage it better? I mean, if I'm, if I have a feed full of negativity, I can turn it off. I can walk away from it if I want to. So why do you think people kind of, let all that come in and they just take it, and it's
so this is something
a little funny.
Yeah, it is. And I'm really interested in this because I, as a hashtag influencer, even though I really dislike the blogger's fine. As a person who puts out content online that I want people to see because I want to share a message about healthy lifestyle behaviours and the importance of prevention, I know I'm encouraging people to come to my content, and because it's not my day job either, I don't spend a huge amount of time thinking about, like, is that, clickbait? I'm not BuzzFeed, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm also I'm very aware of that, and I think that I am trying to use it in a positive way, and I particularly follow people who are doing the same. I think that's really important because we know we're increasing the amount of information we access online, and like literally we can have every fact probably ever known in front of us when we have a Google search engine. Like it's absolutely insane. You think about it, it's less than 30 years old.
It's great.
It is great. It is really, really great. And then the other side of it is something I've learned about quite a bit recently from a few books and things and articles and stuff, is the way, particularly social media, the way it's designed by many of the most successful companies is to take our attention and not give it back. So there's this concept or word phrase, I suppose, called the attention economy, whereby these companies are competing to get our attention. And we know that's true because we've got about 3 or 4 different social media apps on our phone. We check one, we get that little dopamine hit, and it reinforces the behavior to check again. And then we're like, oh, well, that's all the likes I've seen for the past 5 minutes. Let's go on to Twitter. We go on to Twitter. We see that update. We go on to Facebook, see that update. And then put the phone down. No, I've been on it too much today. And then 20 minutes later, a couple of emails. Just flick again and see, and the drip feeding of likes as well. So learning about that and the way, I suppose one thing that bothered me the most, what I read, was about someone likened the way they're designed slot machines. And when I thought of that, and I thought of that and I was like, but how different is it if I'm just clicking and click, So I think that is something we really have to be aware of, that they're designed, these companies want to make money. So
it's an addiction.
It like, the thing is, the science is so, someone wrote a blog post on my website about this recently, and the thing is, this whole science, the area around this is so new, because we've only had the web for about 30 years. I think it was recently its birthday.
Wow.
Happy birthday to the internet. But social media even less so, and smartphones even less so.
Yeah.
Literally, they have changed the world in a way. And so we don't necessarily have long-term research where we can say, okay, a child had this growing up from age 3, and this affected their outcome when they were 40, or how they their memory span, or that kind of thing.
I think that'll be so interesting.
It will,
looking at today's kids.
But it makes it hard now to say what sort of recommendations we need to have. I think I've totally forgotten what your original question was because I've gone on a complete tangent about this.
Me too, but your tangent is great. Please.
But sorry, do I think we need to manage better? I think we need to manage it better, yes, because it's only going to get more advanced. I can't remember Instagram when it didn't have stories, which is crazy because that was probably 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And yet, it might not be Instagram in a year. It could be something completely different. We had anyone else had Bebo?
Oh my god,
I was a Bebo kid.
The days,
the hearts, the loves. So this is the thing, right? But I can still remember not having social media in my life.
Yeah.
Whereas younger generations can't, and I think we do have to get a lot more responsible about how we consume social media, because they're designed to be not to be addictive. Well, in a way they might be. They're designed to be possibly addictive. They're designed to grab our attention, and we do know from possibly from some emerging studies that they do change how we how long our attention span lasts, the sort of memory storing that we do, the different areas of the brain that light up when we socially interact online versus in person.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of potential for downsides, so we have to take responsibility over that.
I think that's
maximize
actually,
the upside.
Yeah, and I think, like you just mentioned, responsibility. I think that's something that's kind of going out the window a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like everyone is like, no, it's social media's fault, but I'm like, whatever happened to self-discipline?
Yeah, totally.
I'm like, it's on you.
Definitely.
You know, we are the ones with the power, really, because we control how much, you know, social media time we're getting,
Definitely.
et cetera.
Like, I think one of the most game-changing things I did, and I had to do it as, like, my following is quite small, but, like, enough that if I let notifications come in from social media, my phone would never stop buzzing. So turning off notifications, I think, is something that if people took one thing from this episode, it would be the most valuable thing you could do. Honestly, you take back so much of your time. And I'm talking social media, I'm talking emails if you can. I know work doesn't make that realistic. So sometimes maybe just the social media or big WhatsApp groups, you know, your phone does not need to ping all the time. And if someone retweets your tweet, you don't need to know about it that instant and like it that instant.
Yeah.
And taking back that time for yourself removes some stimulation out of your day, and it just gives you a little bit less stress from all the stimulation. You might think, oh, that's great, but like it might just be a little bit stressy, and particularly the potential for us to compare ourselves to people online too. I think the more time we spend online, and if we're not responsible about what feeds we're following, that can really affect us as well. You know, that sort of upward comparison can be really damaging.
Yeah. Personally, I actually find Instagram a really positive place because it's the thing that I actually use most. So I feel like their algorithm knows what I like. If I go on to Twitter, if I go on to Twitter, I see like horrible things and people just ranting, and I'm like, oh, I'm back out. I remember now why I don't use this.
There's so much rant on Twitter.
Yeah. It's because it's only 140 characters or something, and I'm like, you can't, you know, educate people on an entire subject in 140 characters. So you can only come out with reactionary comments, and it's very, very negative, I find, personally.
I agree. I think the demographic of who's on Twitter is quite different. I enjoy Twitter because a lot of my academic peers are actually on it.
Yeah.
And I find that really helpful because they'll share articles and things like that, which is brilliant to learn from. But I actually recently listened to a former Google product manager talk about how Twitter actually has a greater retweet rate for things that have more like outrageous words in them. So that's probably why our feed seems so ranty, is because they just get shown more in the algorithm. It's crazy.
And it really does change. Yeah, it really does change your like perception. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting so negative. I have to get out of here. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is.
The other thing that I really want to talk to you about are the world's blue zones. So I remember Oprah talking about this years ago when I was like, yay, hi, what a hero.
Such a hero.
The best teacher in the world. And basically, so I'm going to read out where these blue zones are.
Yeah.
So, and these blue zones are where people live longer and healthier than anywhere else in the world. So apparently Sardinia, Okinawa, Japan, Loma Linda in California, and Costa Rica's isolated Nicoya Peninsula. Oh, and Ikaria in Greece. So you were talking about this on your podcast recently, and you talked about you know, why these people are so healthy and happy and living longer, and it essentially comes down to movement, nourishment, connection, reflection, and purpose.
Yeah.
So starting with movement, how are they moving? Are they doing like lethal exercise?
They spin every morning at 4 a.m. They don't
sweat
sleep.
it out.
No.
Yeah.
Kidding, they sleep lots. And they nap too.
I wish I could nap.
I know. Yeah, my sister's a great napper. Like, just conks out.
So
like,
jealous of those
God
types.
damn, you would have been a great shift worker. But anyway, can't do it. So the blue zones are so interesting because the reason they fascinate me so much, particularly from a public health perspective, which is my kind of area of interest, they live longer, which is great, right? We all want to live forever. But they live better, so they live healthier too. So what we're seeing now is that we live longer than ever before, right? Which is fantastic. And modern medicine has allowed us to do that. And it gets a bad rep. A lot of people talk about, we don't know enough about lifestyle and that kind of thing. But actually, we have saved so many lives in the last century, particularly. We can live to, early 80s, longer if you're female. Woohoo.
Yeah, I think that's something we really need to focus on more. Like, being alive these days is class. There's a lot that needs to be fixed.
Pretty class, yeah.
There's a lot that needs fixing. There's no denying that. But compared to the old days, like, I wouldn't have wanted to be alive back then. No way.
Oh my God, absolutely not. But what we also accumulate as we age, as a population, at the population level, is chronic disease.
Yes.
So we know that they increase as we get older. So, for example, the data from Ireland will show that about 65% of those over 65 will have probably 2 or more chronic conditions. And when I say chronic conditions, I'm talking about things like heart disease, dementia, type 2 diabetes, some cancers. So we know that we might live longer, but not all of us live better, whereas a lot of these populations are free of those chronic diseases. So the researchers wanted to look at why. And they found each blue zone in turn and found the 5 in total, which I'm putting down as my holiday destinations for the next 10 years. But so they found these kind of 9 principles of how they lived. And I kind of put them into 5 for a talk I gave recently. Yeah. And with movement, it's called natural movement. So they don't get up and spin in the morning. I think in Loma Linda, some of the elderly populations do maybe use a little bit of like an aerobic bike because they have access to that. But what they do is they're active throughout their day at sort of a low to moderate intensity. So, for example, they might walk to the market, they might walk to their friend's house, but that walk might be like 2 miles. 2 miles over, 2 miles back.
Okay.
So, and they're doing it throughout their day. A lot of them are older, so they might garden if they're retired, but they don't have these long periods of sedentary behavior that we have in like the Western world.
Yeah. That sedentary behavior freaks me out. It actually scares me on a daily basis. I'm like, this is so unnatural to be sitting down.
Yeah, and this is the problem. It's like, well, everyone is like, this is how do you work otherwise? You know what I mean? So it's really hard. I think if we try and bring natural movement into the 21st century, into our lives, we're looking at things like active transport. So things like, people say stuff like, get off the bus a stop early or get off the DART a stop early. And that's definitely, depends where you're from, depends what your commute is like. But that's definitely a way to do it. Like cycling to work, for example. If you can walk to work, that's fantastic. If you can't, like our Irish physical activity guidelines for like aerobic activity, the kind that gets your heart going, are to have 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity, which is where you can talk but you can't sing. So like a brisk walk, right? So 150 minutes, what does that mean? So people break it up and they say maybe 30 minutes on 5 days of the week, or it could be 20 minutes 7 days of the week. That's kind of semi-good math,
Okay.
And if 30 minutes sounds a lot all at once, 10 minutes brisk in the morning, get yourself out for a lunchtime walk, a walk in the evening. It's much brighter out now that we have the summer, thankfully.
Yeah.
But being active throughout our day, and if we are stuck in these long periods of sedentary behaviour, particularly at work, just getting up on the hour, going to the water cooler, filling up your water bottle, drinking loads of water, you will definitely have to pee. You'll have to get up again. A lot of people have Fitbits now. They're like little grannies on your arm. They will nag you at 10 minutes to the hour and say,
Excellent.
166 steps to go. And you're like, for God's sake. But get up and do it. We do have to, where possible, we have to build that movement into our day, because we do know that doing that is much more beneficial for our health in the long term than A, not doing it, but B, like fitting in like a really crazy sweaty session at the start of the day and then literally not moving until 5 o'clock and going home to the TV, not moving, going to bed. Breaking it up throughout our day is what's most beneficial for our for our physical health and our mental health.
And do you think it counteracts, like it, do you think it does counteract sitting all day, or is it kind of just, this is the best option we have?
So thankfully, this is starting to be looked at quite a bit in the research. So there's a big medical journal, The Lancet, and they did a huge physical activity series about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And there was a really fascinating paper, which we can link in your show notes if you have them. But basically, they looked at people who were in prolonged periods of sedentary behaviour and said, okay, how active do you need to be to offset some of that? Now they came out with a lot of different findings, but basically if people were active at sort of that moderate intensity for an hour to an hour and 15 per day, they did, and they were in, you know, a lot of sitting as well, they did offset any excess risk to mortality.
Nice.
So yeah, so fitting in that walk, you know, it is
doable.
If you like walk to work, you walk home from work, you know, or you just try and just, even if you're not 60 minutes isn't feasible, start with 15, start with 30, start with where you're at. But building it into the day is definitely what's most beneficial, we think. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. I know the girls I work with, they're so sick of me saying talking about my holiday to Cuba for 3 weeks. But while we were there, we walked and walked and walked all day, every day, and just like sat down for lunch. So that was 1 hour sitting down, and it was really easy walking, gentle. It was so hot, so like you were sweating and you needed to get in a lot of water and that. But the end of the 3 weeks, I had no period pain. And I was just like, this has never happened.
Yeah, like movement, our bodies
amazing.
love to move.
Yeah.
And we have, you know, when we're cramped up working at the laptop, you know, I'm so conscious of it now. I'm sitting at my desk all day
and the
writing
shoulders
a thesis.
getting tense.
My right shoulder just goes off, and it's almost like a warning sign. It's like, here, get up, like stop. But building that in is definitely, it's something that I've really even taken on board personally, being like, okay, like it doesn't actually, like if I enjoy going to the gym, I'll go to the gym, but it's much more important that I build activity into my day as well.
Absolutely.
You know, that's the natural movement part of it. Yeah.
And then nourishment, I guess.
Yeah. So in the nourishment part, from the Blue Zones, they do. So they have a plant slant to their diet, which means there's a lot of different. Obviously, we know there's so many diet myths and fads on social media, so we won't even go there. It's a whole other episode. But what they do is they base their diet on plants. So that's things like fruits and vegetables and whole grains, which actually are the bottom 2 layers of our food pyramid in Ireland, meaning they're the most important. So if we bring that into how we can do it in Ireland, getting in 5 to 7 servings of fruits and veg per day, slightly more of those coming from veg than fruit, is really important. And then whole grains as well being a really important staple in our diet as well. So the fruits and veg are the bottom layer, like the biggest layer, being most important, and then whole grains are next after that. And that's what these populations do. And they eat a lot of plant-based proteins. So things like lentils and beans and peas and all that, and nuts and seeds. Really, like lots of whole foods. Really good balance of complex carbohydrates, so lots of slow release energy, really good amount of dietary fibre, which we do not get enough of in Ireland, but is really important for our gut health and our metabolic health. And lots of different micronutrients, so vitamins and minerals from those foods as well. So they do eat meat, so it's not about being vegan or vegetarian or whatever. I think in Loma Linda they are vegetarian, but none of these populations were particularly vegan, but they ate meat pretty infrequently, which we know from recent science is good for us and is good for the planet. Yeah. So I think it kind of, there's a lot of debate about how much meat to eat, or, you know, planetary health and all that kind of stuff. Particularly in January, there was a big publication that came out and it was all over the headlines. But focusing on that sort of moderation over deprivation approach, I think, is really important. It's important. And just like we definitely all need as a population, definitely in Ireland, to base our diets on fruits and veg and whole grains. And getting a little bit more plant protein in helps us maybe to reduce down the meat side of it a little bit. Like there's nothing wrong with eating meat at all. Really good source of nutrients. I have it a few times a week with my family, but it's eaten together, and like getting more plant proteins into the diet, I think we could definitely all do a lot more.
How many times a week would you eat meat?
Personally, I live at home with my family, so we sit down to have dinner pretty much every day together, which is
really nice.
That's so important. Nice. It is, honestly, I'm actually overdue an Instagram post on it, and I'm moving to Galway in July, so I know that I'm gonna miss that so much. But I suppose this is a big point about food. I did an Instagram post on it recently about not labeling how you eat, because like a lot of people assume, probably because of how much I talk about needing to have more fruits and veg and whole grains, that I'm vegetarian, and I'm not. I probably eat meat 3 or 4 times a week, but it's usually at dinner. I don't have it at lunch or breakfast. And then I have fish as well. When I moved to Galway, like I don't particularly miss meat if I don't have it personally, but I definitely would miss fish. Yeah. And I think just even from a planetary perspective, you know, ethical and moral motivations aside, because if people are ethically opposed to consuming animal products, that is absolutely fine and that's their choice. You know, you have to respect that, absolutely. It's really important. But from a planetary perspective and for the environment, it's something we could probably all get on board with, because we all need to live on this planet for the next, hopefully, 50, 60 years. And learning more about getting plant proteins in, eating more fruits, veg, which is what we need to do as a population anyway, helps us displace some of that meat out.
Yeah, perfect.
And having more of a balance of white than red, I think, is probably an important point.
The way to go. I'd love my own chickens. I'd love to have my own chickens.
Oh,
have an egg in the morning. Yeah.
Be
we'll
lovely.
call her Henrietta. I haven't planned this at all.
I mean, Henrietta, no.
And then the next one, connection.
Yes, connection. So connection, again, brings it back to social media, but connection in person, I think, is, so in the blue zones, they prioritize family and friends, and they see them probably like every day, and a lot of them live in intergenerational households. For example, in Okinawa, like a grandparent or even great grandparent, because they live so long, will live with their grandchildren or great grandchildren.
Yeah.
So it means that as they age, you know, and they're not perfect, like they do, like our bodies age and they start to get frail, they do accumulate, you know, all the different knocks and things like that, and less able to look after themselves, but they have family to look after them. And they also have these lovely groups of friends. For example, in Okinawa, I can never pronounce this, but it's Maui. Groups of 5 women, 5 friends that come together every day at, like, let's say 5 o'clock, and have a cup of tea, or whatever it is they drink, and they catch up and just have a laugh, you know. And that's not feasible every day to get your 5 friends together. If you're anything like me, it's once a month. It's really hard. But doing that, at least having, you know, social interaction in person with family or friends, if you can every day, but like at least every week. Because it's like sleep. It's one of the first things to go when you get stressed, but it is one of the biggest antidotes to your stress.
Yeah. And would you say, like, ensure that those connections and friendships are real friendships? Because I was talking to someone, actually it was like a good while ago, and she I know her from college, and she was just saying, you know what, my group of friends, I'm not happy around them. And I was just like, okay, well, maybe, you know, start a hobby, make some new friends. And it kind of got me thinking, you know, it's probably more so that we need to be around people that make us happy, and those kind of connections, rather than just
completely people
definitely. Who might bring you a little bit down,
or
I
think so.
You weren't really feeling it with.
I think I think you definitely have to be really mindful of that. Because what you want really, I mean, they say you're an average of 5 people you spend the most time with, but there is actually studies that show that that is true. It might not be necessarily like 5 people, but your social network has to support your way of life and how you want to live. Like, you are definitely more likely to, for example, give up smoking if you have a family member or a friend that is supporting you and checking in and saying, how's that going? Like, how's the cravings, that kind of thing. And that's just an example from a health point of view. But like, for example, if you wanted to try a dietary change, like let's say have less meat in your week, like you need to have someone who's willing to accept that if you're living with them or you're, you know, working with them, etc. And I think we do have to be aware of how that, it's like everything, how it affects us mentally, and whether it supports what we believe in and our values as people. It's important to be mindful of it. Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. And what else? Reflection.
Yeah, so I suppose we've kind of touched on this quite a lot, but reflection is just that the blue zones populations take a few minutes every day to reflect. In Sardinia they nap, I think, which I'm totally on board with. That's absolutely fine. But they take a few minutes every day to just chill out. And it might be with a friend, it might be just sitting down to have a cup of tea in the afternoon.
And does it mean like reflecting on your life, where you are? Are we getting real deep here, or is it more so just taking like a time out?
I think that's going to depend on the person. Like, I think I've become very reflective over the last year, definitely.
Me too.
Yeah, maybe
like,
it's a 20s thing. I don't know.
Life?
What does it all mean? Oh my God. But I think that is, it depends. Like, some days when I reflect, it's like, okay, how's my to-do list looking? You know, or what's on later, what's on this weekend. Other times it's like, what is purpose? Well, you know, and it gets real deep. But I think taking that time every day, as opposed to, let's say, like driving home in crazy traffic, really stressful day, and you're like, oh God, this is all so terrible. You know, just taking a few minutes and going, okay, why is it terrible? Like, what happened? Okay, actually, that's not that bad, and I can definitely change that, and I actually will call that friend. You know, just a few minutes to take yourself out of yourself, if that makes sense. Because we have, like, listened to a really interesting podcast recently where a guy had named his, you know, that inner voice that can be really nice but can be really mean, and he called her Becky. It was really interesting. It was the How to Fail podcast, but he was basically saying that when Becky gets mean, he was like, Becky, stop. You're being so stupid. Like, stop it, Becky.
You're being a bitch, Becky.
He's like, I control Becky. And that voice, we need to train that voice to be kind. Because, like, my new rule for myself is, if you would not say that to your best friend, do not say that to yourself. And not perfect at it, definitely not. But remembering that is really important. And that might just be what reflection brings you, you know?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Interesting.
We
And
can all call her inner ego Becky now. Poor Becky.
Poor
Sorry
Becky.
to anyone called Becky who's listening.
Beyonce gave her such a hard time as well, like in the last year or two.
Exactly.
Oh. And then last but not least, purpose.
Yeah. So my one word to describe myself.
Yeah.
That it probably sounds like I'm being very, what's the word? I don't know what the word is, but like saying, oh, you know, I'm all about purpose. Like I found my purpose.
Yeah.
Like it's a work in progress.
It is important, though.
It is important.
Yeah.
I think you should have something that you like, whether it's, I don't know, your child or your dog or your cat, if you're a cat person, you know, or it's your work, or it's, you know, something, your hobby that you do, whether it's something that makes you want to get out of bed every morning. And you might have a couple of them, you know, that's absolutely fine. I just think having them is really important because it can be hard enough to get out of bed sometimes. You need to have something that makes you want to go and do it.
Especially in winter.
Yeah. But I think it is really important. And like there's a really good tip in one of the Blue Zones books about if you're sitting there going, I have absolutely no idea what my ikigai is. Don't even like that word. What is purpose? What fulfills me? Just make a list. So make a list and go, okay, what am I good at? And like be really honest with yourself. What are you good at? Like, you know, it might be just really basic stuff.
Yeah.
What am I good at? What does the world need? What do I love doing? And what can I get paid for? So make those 4 lists. They might be really short, but see if they overlap. And if they overlap, that's a little bit of an ikigai, but you might find things within those that you really enjoy, and some might overlap and others don't. I think if you can find something that matches with all 4, ideal. So you can try and make it something that you do every day and get paid for too, obviously. But I think even if it's just a side hobby, like my blog is a side hobby. It's not my day job. It's not my main source of income, but I really love doing it.
But it's part of your purpose. It's like part of what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think having a purpose is definitely like the key to happiness. I think everyone should try and figure it out, like what their purpose is. It might be really hard, but I fully believe it's worth it.
Take a long time.
Yeah,
like
it might take a year, could take decades, but never stop trying to find what your purpose is. It's so key.
Or just realizing what you enjoy and doing more of that.
Yeah,
I think, you know, even if it's that, like, you just love yoga or you're not a yoga teacher, that's fine. You don't have to be a yoga teacher. You just really enjoy doing yoga. Do more of that.
And you can be crap at yoga, but if you enjoy doing it, do it.
Yoga, honestly. That's the whole point. Like, you just can't. It's just about what you bring and what you take away. But it's also, I know it's not also for everyone, but it's definitely what helped me become a lot more reflective and just slow down a bit and not beat 100 miles an hour like all the time. Just 90, a solid 95. It's fine.
Okay, amazing. I think we'll leave it there today. I think we've covered
quite
a lot of important stuff, and hopefully everyone got like lots of little snippets they can take away and apply to their own lives. And hopefully it'll make your day even happier than it is usually. So Dr. Ciara Kelly, thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure.
It was lovely.
And make sure to tune in next week, and you'll love next week's Girls with Goals. So toodaloo, bye.